Hey, New Hope family, Pastor Russ here. Thanks so much for letting me barge in, take a few moments of your small group time. Most of you are aware of the fact that on January 22nd, we had a meeting of those who are involved at New Hope and leaders at New Hope. It's just some very important material that we need to share with the church family. And we want to share some of that same material with you, and that's why I'm doing this video. I've never done anything quite like this, so I'm feeling very high-tech right now. So hopefully we can kind of get through this. We started that meeting by asking a very important question that we quite often ask our staff. Why do we exist as a church? Why does New Hope Community Church exist? And the main reason is simply we exist to bring people into a life-changing relationship with Jesus Christ. That's why we exist. And then once somebody becomes a Christian, as most of you have made that step of faith, then our desire is to help you grow to spiritual maturity in your relationship with Christ and allow God to work in you and through you so that you're making a difference with your life, you're influencing other people for Christ. So that's why we exist. Also, too, if you've been in our services the last couple of weeks where we've talked about, in this series called Tough as Nail, we've talked about that our country is at a very unique time, unlike any that I know I've ever experienced in my life. It's a time of uncertainty, a time of great fear, but it's a time in which we're seeing incredibly rapid change in our culture and our society. It's a time in which, more than ever, our society, America, needs you, me, New Hope Community Church. It needs what we bring to the table. Some of the facts that I shared at that meeting, they're kind of a little bit daunting and a little bit scary in some ways. It's the rise of what people call churchless America. Almost half of Americans no longer even go to church. Even more disturbing than that are the millennial generation, those between 25 and 35, who in just a few years will be the largest generational segment of the American population. Over half of the millennials don't go to any type of church. 70% say church is totally irrelevant, and only 7.5% of millennials attend church on a regular basis. A regular basis is defined as at least one time a month. Across the board in our country, church attendance is down. Financial giving is down. Many people refer now to America no longer as a Christian nation, but as a post-Christian nation, taking the beginning steps of what happened the last couple of hundred years, even in Europe, per se. Another thing that's happening that will impact churches is some tax reform. Some states, rather, have already begun to charge property taxes on nonprofit organizations, including churches, which is unprecedented in our country. Never has happened before. When that happens in California, that's going to have a real impact on our church as well. While some of this information kind of may seem like a little bit of a downer, I just want to say to you, in one way, yes, there's some negative things, but this is our greatest moment as a church. It's our greatest opportunity. It's our chance to shine brighter than we have ever shined before, because the good news of Jesus Christ shines the brightest in times of uncertainty, times of fear, dark times like we're finding and facing right now. This past week, I received an email from somebody that attends our church, and they just said a couple of things that really just made me just feel good all over, related to understanding what we're about as a church. This person had befriended somebody that they had met, invited them to come to New Hope, and they came to New Hope and have been actually a couple of times, 2 or 3 times now, in fact, on that. And they said, I don't know if they're a Christian or not, but here's what this person wrote. Thank you for creating such a welcoming atmosphere where people feel comfortable to come and check things out and are able to ask questions about God. They go on and they say, not all churches are like that, and they are right. Our church is unique. Our church has a special niche, if you would, that we have carved out in Chula Vista. And we play an important part in what God is doing in this city. And so it's just something that is just so important that we understand that's kind of what we do. It is a safe place to bring your unchurched friends. It's interesting that this person actually met them at Upward Basketball. This was the new family's first exposure to our church was through Upward Basketball. Another thing, too, that's positive as far as our church is, I think is important to share with you, is that we are a relatively young church. This is important because when we moved onto this campus in 2009, 2 out of every 3 adults were over the age of 50. So 67% of our adults were over the age of 50 and not getting any younger, myself included. Today, 60% plus of our population of adults is younger than 50. So we have flipped that around. That's very positive for us. Why do people even stay at a church? Why are you still at New Hope Community Church? There are two main reasons. The most important by far is relationships. Because you've made friendships, that's what causes people to stick at a church. So that's significant to us. The second reason is that people are involved in ministry. But even during doing ministry, you're building relationships. That's why our vision statement is relationships for life change. We believe that life change best happens in the context of relationship with God and with other people. In 2017, there are two main emphases at our church, things that we must do. The first one is this: we must continue to reach people for Jesus Christ. That is our God-given purpose. That's our marching orders. This is not something optional that we do. This is our purpose, is what we do. And the number one way that we reach people and see lives change is through people like you and me inviting our friends to come to New Hope. So I simply ask you, as you go about your life, you meet people, if the ministries of our church have blessed you, invite others to come and join you. A simple invitation to church could literally change somebody's life for all of eternity. So that's one big emphasis, is continue to reach people for Christ. We also see people coming to our church through our Tiny Tots, our sports programs, after school programs as well. Tell your friends about those programs. I think they could probably benefit, especially if they have children, from those as well. The second emphasis is to take care of those that we have, people like you, and those that we reach. That's why small groups are so important, and I'm so glad that you are in a small group. That's where other people get to know you, who you really are, you're known, and you get to know other people as well. One of the things that we'll be doing this year is so important as we are growing is that we'll constantly be starting new small groups. January just passed, our greatest January in the history of our church. We averaged about 780 people. That was really a great month for us. We had 80 first-time guests representing 67 different families that are locally that visit our church for the very first time. We need to get them in small groups as well. Also, too, we need more people involved in ministry, and hopefully you are involved in some type of ministry at New Hope. If so, I encourage you, the best way to help your ministry grow is invite your friends to join you in that ministry. You'll also see more community service projects that we'll be doing as well. I also want you to know that we need your financial support here at New Hope in order to continue impacting lives. Just like you have your bills, the church has bills as well. We have a mortgage just like you. So it costs money to do the ministry that we have. You are going to be given, if you've not already received this, a sheet of paper with some brief notes from that meeting, but also a couple of diagrams. The first diagram is a ladder. It's called the generosity ladder. And what I would ask you to do is simply look at the diagram, figure out which rung of the ladder you are on, and then ask, is God prompting me to maybe to go to the next rung? The first rung on that ladder is maybe you've never even contributed to New Hope. Maybe you never knew that the church really needed that financial support. So for you, the first rung of the ladder is become a first-time giver. From there, it moves up to becoming an intentional giver. That's somebody who gives regularly, but maybe it's like a set amount, $50, $100 a month, whatever it may be. We would encourage you to consider moving to a proportional giver, where you give a percentage of your income to the ministries of the church. Maybe it's 3%, 5%, whatever it may be. From there, the next step up is tithing. This is a biblical principle that's taught throughout Scripture in both the Old and New Testament, that we're to trust and honor God with 10% of our income. And even from that, there's one other step called an extravagant giver, that God has so richly blessed certain people financially that even 10% would be something that they could say, no, I need to give more because of how God has blessed me. So I simply ask that you look at that and just ask God, what would you have me do? One of the biggest things that's going to be happening this year is our building. We're going to complete our campus. We're in the process of doing that. You're going to be hearing a lot about that in the upcoming weeks. But again, we go back and ask, why are we building a building? The reason is pretty simple. It's nothing more than a tool to reach more people for Christ. Our expanded campus is going to allow us to reach thousands of more people, impact thousands of more life for the kingdom of God, children, youth, and adults. If you're not familiar with what goes on in our building is used 24/7. Every morning, every afternoon, and most every evening, things are going on at this church. We've run out of room. Just last year, we brought in the portable buildings to help us expand and grow. But we are kind of maxed out our growth again. And when you have no room to grow, you stagnate. So our buildings are going to help, our new building is going to help us do just that. When you look at the diagram, you're going to see that our building is being designed in such a way that we can have a lot of different influence other than just what we do on Sundays or the weekends and what we do during the nights. We can expand our preschool program if God leads, have after-school programs. We could even have a school, lease the building out, part of the building out for a school. We can host community events. In 2 weeks, we have a Building God's Way architectural team. They're going to be designing our church, designed our first building as well. Going to be meeting with our leadership building team to get going as far as the functions that we have to have this building for. It's going to be a very exciting time. We're projecting our groundbreaking will be in 1 year from today. As I close, 4 things that our church needs from you now. First of all, we need you to pray. The Apostle Paul, when he wrote his letter to the church at Corinth, put it this way. He said, I planted, Apollos watered, but God caused the growth. We can do all these activities, all these things, but if God's not in it, we're not going to grow. It's just wasted time. So we need to pray that God would use what we're doing, guide us, lead us. We're his church. Help us to do what he wants that would impact people, draw people to Jesus Christ. The second thing we need you to do is to live a life where you can influence people and invite them to come to New Hope with you. We've already talked about that. That's the number one way that people come to our church and how they ultimately see their lives change, inviting our friends. Number 3, we encourage you to be involved in the ministry if you're not already involved. And then finally, financially, I would ask that you ask the question, what's my next step on the giving ladder? 2017 is going to be the greatest year in the history of our church. I hope you'll be an integral part of that. I'm looking forward to going through the new year with you. And as always, I am blessed and so grateful to be one of your pastors here at New Hope. Thanks again for the time. Have a great group meeting.